Hi, my name is Amy, and I am from Your Story Writing Services. I am a ghostwriter, I am a coach for writers, and I'm also an editor. Your Story Writing Services is a business that I started to help people share their stories because I believe that your story is the most valuable and important and world changing asset that you have in your life. And I believe that too many people are not using their story in the way that it was meant to be used. So I'm using this channel to offer tools, strategies, tips, motivation, all things concerning your story, my story. I'm also going to be using it to share parts of my story and then invite other people along to share their story because that's where our souls connect. I mean, if you think about it, that's why we do most of the things that we do. We go to movies because we want to hear stories. We read books because we want to hear stories. We talk to people. We get in relationships with people based on the similarities of our stories. There's a soul connect there. And I want to separate myself a little bit from what I see going on in the writing world. And not that it's a bad thing, but I feel like so much that's going on in the writing world is based on technicalities and based on the elements of writing, which is needed. There's nothing worse than reading a quote unquote published or self-published book that's filled with grammar errors. The flow is terrible, and it's just an overall unenjoyable experience. So I'm not discounting that, and that's something that I am going to be implementing. But I think when that becomes primary and the other aspect of writing, which is the soul connect, which is sharing something deep within you, which is the vulnerability, which is what makes reading books magical and enjoyable and life-changing, I believe many times is shelved, is not focused on. The meditating aspect of sharing your story, the soothing and the therapeutic aspect of sharing your story, I think so often is ignored. And that's something that I really want to focus on, and I want you to understand when it comes to writing your story. So today I want to talk about, my focus for today is just your story is needed. And I want to talk about 3 areas or 3 groups of people that need your story. So the first one is not necessarily a group, because the first one is you. You need your story. Now, I know that sounds weird because you've lived your story, so why would you need your story? Let me explain it to you a little bit. Your story, and not just the elements of your story, not just what has happened to you, but how you've responded to your story and the lessons that you've learned, you need it. So often we can allow ourselves just to live our lives and to allow life to happen to us and allow ourselves just to become the sum of what has occurred. And we become victims. I was recently, well, I guess it wasn't too recent, but I've helped people write books, and I've also edited some books. And some of the books that I've edited, it's not that they're bad, but it just becomes a listing of all the events that have happened in their life. So instead of reading like a journey and reading like something that you're learning from and something that is becoming an experience, it becomes a list of the things that happened to them, and it makes them sound like a victim. And we don't want to necessarily be victims of the circumstances in our lives or our experiences. We want to recount, how did I respond to what happened to me? How did I learn? How did I take that situation and learn from it? How did I take that experience and capitalize on it or transform it? That is the power of a story. We all love an underdog story, not because of all the bad things that happened to the underdog, but how that underdog took the bad things and ended up changing it and ended up living having a triumphant moment. That's what we read underdog stories for. And that's really how your story is needed. It's not necessarily needed for you to recount all the bad things that happened in your life. It doesn't do a lot of good. Like if you were abused, if you sit around all day and just talk about how you were abused and talk about the person that abused you and all the terrible characteristics, while all those things may be true, and it is necessary to be honest about that, the power comes in when you understand, how do I overcome that? Or how do I take this situation and use it as leverage to become successful in my life? How do I respond to what has happened to me? That is when your story becomes healing for you. That's when your story becomes your greatest life teacher. That's when your story gets infused in your purpose, in your career, in your relationships, in your future. I've said this before, when you go to a therapist, they don't have curriculum for you. Normally they don't say, here's a book and this is what's going to guide our time together. A therapist says, let's talk about your life. That's what they use. The curriculum that they use to help you heal is your life, is your pain, is the parts that you think, why would I recount that? You're not recounting it just to celebrate it. You're recounting it to say, this happened to me, so how do I respond to it? How do I overcome it? How do I use it as learning and knowledge? So you are the first person that needs your story. The second, now this is a group. The second group that needs your story is your audience. Now notice I didn't say the world, I said your audience, because everybody might not be the audience to your story, and that is okay. I remember when I wrote my first book and I was very new at it. Like I didn't grow up thinking I want to be an author someday. I've stumbled upon so many things in my life, mostly because I believe with great risk comes great reward. So I've taken a lot of great risks in my life, and those great risks have led me down paths that I never would have chosen. But once I got there, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the path I needed anyways. So I decided to write a book. And when I wrote the book, just to sum up in a little bit, I wrote the book with the idea of integrity, and I was thinking that everybody was going to connect with this topic, that everybody wanted integrity. So I talked a lot about some secrets that I had had in my life, but I had never been able to share. And once I wrote it, there were some people that called me and connected immediately. They said, oh my gosh, like you spoke to me. This is what I needed to hear. And I'm encouraged, like, yes, my story is going to change the world. My story's for the world. But on the flip side of that, I had people that called me and they were very upset. And a lot of those people were close to me. So they were upset. They didn't agree with the content of the book. And I was devastated because I'm thinking, why would you not like this book? It's fantastic. How could you not support a book on integrity, you know? And I got so caught up in that, and I got a little sad, and it discouraged me for a while because I was thinking, I can't share this because people don't agree with it. But then I realized that everybody's not the audience for your story. There are some people that are going to fully 100% connect, identify, and there's going to be a soul connect with that person, with that audience. They're going to read it and say, I've been waiting my entire life to hear somebody tell a story in this way. This is what I needed. And those are the people that you write for. Those are the people that give you the motivation that you need. The others that may not connect or may not appreciate your story or may discredit what you've been through or discount what you're sharing, that's fine. They're not your audience anyways. So if that's their opinion, that's great. You know, they'll find somebody's story that they connect with, and they're just not your ideal audience. But your audience needs your story. There is somebody out there who is just like you at the same place in their lives, or there's somebody that is where you used to be and they need encouragement. They need someone to say, that's where I used to be, but here's how I overcame, or here's some situations in my life and here's how I responded to them, and this is how I've benefited from it. So your audience needs your story. The third thing, and this one I think is highly important and one that we ignore, is your legacy. Your legacy needs your story. Now, your legacy can be left through your children. If you don't have children, it can be left through any person that's in your circle of influence. When the people that are benefiting right now from your presence, from your life, from your story, but then the people who will carry on your legacy, your story, who will carry on your influence, they need your story. They need your vulnerability. And I say this specifically to parents or to people who have a strong influence on children. If you are not careful and you do not share your story and you do not take an opportunity to sit down with the kids that you influence to share the things that you've learned or to share the areas that you've struggled, and you don't share that with them without even realizing it, many times your secrets follow you. Not necessarily your triumphs, a lot of times your secrets, not what you present, not this great exterior. A lot of times it's the things you struggle with in secret. It's the things that you don't tell people, the things you're ashamed of, the things that make you feel vulnerable or uncomfortable. Those are usually the things that follow you and that end up going into your legacy, the people that are closest to you, you know. A lot of times parents, I've heard parents talk about some of the things that their children struggle with, and they say, they remind me just of me. They remind me of me when I was their age. And they're repeating what I did. They're repeating my struggles, which can happen. And, you know, that's not to say anything bad about the parents, but that's an opportunity for you not to clam up and to say, well, I don't want to share that because if I do, they'll view me in a different way. Or if I share this, it'll tear down this exterior that I've tried to build. You know, the exterior of perfection. All of that is nonsense. You know, when it comes to your legacy, vulnerability is key. Because you're showing them that it's okay that you struggle. It's okay that life doesn't work out in the way that you thought it was. It's okay that you struggle with this addiction, or that, you know, you can't find your way right now, or you're lost. It's okay because I've been there. Here's my story. Here's what I went through. I remember I was doing a book for a gentleman, his son. He did a book for his son, and it was a legacy book for his son. It was one of my most favorite ghostwriting projects because I think that it is something that we neglect. And in a book, he gave his son this book, and in the book, he just details, one chapter was the things that I would do over again if I had the chance. And in a vulnerable way, he told his son, if I could go back to being your age, here's the things I would have done differently. Here's all the knowledge that I've learned in the years that I've been alive, and I'm passing it on to you. I'm leaving my story to you so that it can go beyond me. My legacy can know my story, learn from my mistakes, you know, take a lot of the things that I've done for my successes and use those as well. So your legacy needs your story. So your story is needed in every area of your life and in every aspect of your life. And most importantly, we need your story. So once again, my name is Amy Kochek. I'm with Your Story Writing Services. If you are interested in ghostwriting, if you are interested in coaching, if you have a project and you want to be coached through it, a book, or if you're looking for a professional editor, please go to my Facebook page. Contact me. I would love to sit down and talk with you. The first call is a no commitment call. If you just want to talk your book out or you just want some ideas, contact me. I will be glad to speak with you. So this is your story and we can help you tell it. Remember, don't go to the grave with your story. Let it change the world.